Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Ask Wrestle Juice. You guys have a bunch of great questions. We're going to get to them in just a moment. But first, I want to say thank you everybody that has reached out and expressed your condolences, your well wishes, etc., etc. Obviously, this past week was a really rough one as the friendo community, the larger Going In Raw friendo club Wrestle Juice community, lost a dear friend, a member of the crew, just a beautiful human being altogether. The enforcer, Stevie Bradley. I know you guys probably saw the post that I made here on Wrestle Juice, the post that we made on social media, and of course the videos that we produced where we've talked about losing the enforcer. It's been a really rough couple days. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of this program. So if the record time, if the length of this show is a bit longer than usual, that's going to be why. But I think most people are here for wrestling. So let's go ahead and get into the wrestling aspect of things. First up, we're going to talk about AEW stuff from Shrapnel Sponge. He says, do you think with the new AEW show, if they have the rumored CM Punk leading the charge, will it be a draw or will it just fail as it's splitting audiences into the Elite or Punk camps? I don't think that is necessarily a concern. I don't think splitting the audience between the two shows is going to be an issue. Generally speaking, from what I sort of gather, AEW fans are AEW fans. I think obviously there are fans of CM Punk. There's fans of the Elite. There's fans of all sorts of stuff going on in AEW. But by and large, the AEW fans are there for AEW and they sort of trust the brand to do what they have established themselves, what AEW has established, like what it does. And I think that's sort of true. I mean, obviously, you know, for example, with Punk's absence, the ratings have gone down. I think that's probably a variety of things, but I absolutely think CM Punk is going to bring a certain audience back to AEW. So I don't think that's going to be the problem. I think if anything is going to be an issue, it's going to be more product. It's going to be, does Tony Khan, will he be able to book fresh weekly content now that he's adding a major 2-hour show to an already pretty loaded schedule? The creative, I think, is in danger of maybe getting stale. We saw this in 2022. There was a stretch of time when it seemed like AEW was sort of spinning their wheels. And I think he might be helped with the addition of Will Washington to the creative team. So hopefully that will help, you know, alleviate some of the pressure there, some of the load. But that's sort of the major concern. I don't know how much CM Punk in the first place was, and I'm trying to remain positive about this because I want it to succeed. I really do. Punk was there for 7 months before he got injured. And then he was there for 2 matches before he got injured again. He's not getting any younger. He's been gone for a long time. There's bound to be some ring rust. I hope they utilize him in a way that maximizes his value to the company, because he's basically useless if he's injured and can't wrestle. If he can't appear on TV in feuds, then he's useless. So I hope they keep him to big time matches. If you find a way to justify giving him an MJF type schedule, that's probably a smart way to go. So I think, you know, CM Punk, I'll put it this way. CM Punk is not going to be the thing that makes this succeed or fail. I don't believe that to be the case. I think you can have any number of people on that roster because it is a loaded roster. As long as the creative is good, then people will watch the product. Yeah, I mean, this has been proven time and time again. You can take Roman Reigns from 2014 to 2019 and try to shove them down people's throats. And if the creative is bad, people aren't going to be into it. You can give that same person a killer story and a great character in the Tribal Chief and the Bloodline, and people will be interested again, and the ratings will start to tick up and engagement will start to tick up and the TV deals will flood in as we've seen. So I think that the overriding thing about AEW or any wrestling promotion is going to be, is it good? Is the creative good? CM Punk is not the catch-all. He's not going to be the thing that's going to fix everything. And he's not going to be the guy that leads Collision to the promised land over a 3-year period. That might work for the first 6 months, but eventually he's not going to be able to wrestle anymore because the way he wrestles, the state of his body, that stuff is going to give out. Or eventually he's going to retire. I don't know. But you're going to need good creative across the board. And so far, when Tony Khan loads up his schedule with programming, he's been proven to drop the ball when that is the case. So what I hope is the addition of Will Washington and maybe a renewed emphasis on, hey, let's produce some compelling television, not just more television, will help AEW succeed in that. They're about to announce probably a massive TV deal, which I think will help things because they'll have a bigger budget. They'll be able to make sure they get good talent. They might be able to sign Drew McIntyre if he ends up leaving WWE. And I hope the company succeeds. I really do. Whether or not it will, who knows? But the good TV deal, I mean, and selling whatever, 75,000 at Wembley or whatever it is, that certainly goes a long way. It shows that there is a demand for the product. You want to make sure your product's good. Archer Hollow continues on, says, should the new AEW show create a new world championship or should they bring something over like the All Atlantic Championship as the main title? No, I think that you should have the one world title, the one world champion, the way they did the original brand split for the first 5 months or so when Brock Lesnar ended up going to SmackDown exclusively and they had 2 world titles. I personally would probably prefer one main champion. As long as that one main champion is constantly in stories, perhaps on both shows. And then, yeah, you probably want to try to elevate your TNT title and your international titles. Keep those on separate brands. I mean, let's be honest. I kind of feel like AEW probably could use an actual brand split of sorts, even if they don't need to call it as such. I think it's probably not a terrible idea to keep the brand separate, but I don't know. We'll find out how they're going to approach it. Eric Joshua says, which AEW wrestler do you think Jay White could have a great feud with after Ricky Starks? That's a tricky one because I don't know who's going to come out on the winning end of that feud. That was I don't know if that was a great idea. Ricky Starks needs big wins right now, and Jay White just debuted and he needs big wins. I don't know how you resolve this feud without one of those guys going over, but whatever. Jay White, put him with CM Punk. Put him with CM Punk, put him with Adam Cole, maybe. Adam Cole's a good guy these days. Jay White's a bad guy. I think it probably works. Johnny Burney says, would you want AEW pay-per-views to move to Max and become monthly? For my business? Yeah, sure. Why not? Absolutely. Yeah, I kind of feel like AEW could use more pay-per-views. I don't know about monthly, but maybe what do they have? They're like 6 a year now. I think they've upped that to 7 because of All In. You got the main 4, you got Forbidden Door, you got All In. What is that, 6? All right. I think they could add 2 more. I think like 8 a year would probably be good. I mean, you've got some major shows like Winter is Coming, which is supposed to be like a pay-per-view, but this year I think it was or last year rather, was kind of limp. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know about monthly, but like 8 times, I think 8 times a year is probably good. Mike HD says, with Miro and Thunder Rosa both showing up to pretty much join Collision, what other underutilized AEW stars do you want to see join the Collision roster? Underutilized? I don't know, but I am going to do a video early next week or maybe even tomorrow, depending on what my schedule looks like, where I'm going to split up the roster and say who I want on each show, because I think that's fun. N. Yun Spur says, with AEW's new show looming, do you see Tony Khan bringing in more Joshi wrestlers? Or do you see more of the AEW contracted ladies being featured? It's a second show, 2 hours. I feel like he's going to follow a similar format that he has with Dynamite on Collision. So you're going to get that one women's match, and they will need to beef up like whichever title they feature on Collision, the TBS, so probably a TBS title. They're going to need to surround Jade Cargill with an actual women's division for that to work. Otherwise, it's going to be like there's going to be nothing going on. There's going to be Jade Cargill week after week taking on one opponent after another, where you have all the other women on the other show, which is kind of how it is now. She's just sort of on Jade Island and everybody else is there. Do I see him bringing in more Joshi wrestlers? I don't know. I mean, that seemed to be the thing that they did at the outset of AEW, but they really dialed that back. I feel like they should probably bring Athena up to Collision. and some others. Again, got a video coming up where I've already split up the brands, but you got to watch that video coming up. Let's see here. Cameron Dobby says, do you think it's a good idea for AEW to run All In and All Out within a week of each other? We're going to find out. I mean, look, you can't argue with All In getting 75,000 people so far. I think that's what the number is. You can't. I mean, come on. That's just, yeah, I don't know. I would imagine he thought out how he's going to book these shows in advance. You either do like a bunch of multi-man matches at sort of the New Japan thing. You do a bunch of multi-man matches on one show and then break those up into singles matches on the other show. I don't think All In's going to be an actual pay-per-view. I think it's probably going to be maybe like a Max special, or they'll put it on TNT or something like that. I could be wrong about that, but you're going to have your fan base plunked down $50 one weekend, $50 another weekend. I don't know. Maybe he is expecting that. I mean, it seems like a fleecing to me, but whatever. Claus Techno says, with all the brawls and drama in the AEW locker room, people forget that one of the first big controversies there was Santana and Ortiz going separate ways and ending LAX. My question is, should Tony Khan try to make these guys work things out? I don't think that's on him. Here's the thing. That didn't end up being a big deal because they were so quiet about it. Like, it just sort of like people were talking about it, kind of. They never really referenced it on TV. Santana got injured, so it's kind of a non-issue. Should they get back up together? I think that's sort of on them. That's a different thing than like, hey, if AEW's smart, they'd find a way to have Kenny Omega and CM Punk have a match. Like, that makes sense because that could draw. Santana Ortiz not being a tag team. I mean, they already have a stacked tag team division. So they don't, LAX, it's just sad, but I don't think that he should make an effort unless there is some sort of willingness on both sides to want to do that, and they would just need mediation. Kid Cuddy says, also with Tony Khan focusing on the analytics and demographics so much. Oh, sorry, hold on a second. This is a kind of a two-part question. So Kid Cuddy asks, who do you think will be the first black male in AEW to win the world championship? Seems like it's going to be tied up for the next couple of years, and all of the candidates are nowhere near the title scene. He also says, also with Tony Khan focusing on the analytics and demographics so much, do you think that hurts him when it comes to booking? So there's sort of two answers here. One, in terms of does it hurt him? I feel like it hurts the product. I think if you look back at this past week's Dynamite, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't notice one black wrestler on that show. To me, that's an issue. To me, I think that's bad business. Tony Khan probably looks at, we sold out Wembley, or we're going to sell out Wembley. We're getting a big TV deal, which he'll probably say is like $1 billion over like 5 or whatever years. Like, they're obviously not going to get as much as WWE, but they'll probably be able to claim, hey, for a much smaller amount over a much larger period of time at an escalated rate than we got before, we're getting $1 billion deal. I would imagine that that's going to take place sometime this week. I think they're supposed to make an announcement like on Dynamite or something. Wouldn't surprise me to see that. That's not even necessarily a prediction. It's just me saying, wouldn't be surprised. He's a guy who probably wants to say $1 billion deal, and they've probably finagled a way to make that happen. However, the ratings aren't great. I think CM Punk's going to have a honeymoon period. Collision's on a bad night. Warner Brothers seems to be fine with all that stuff. Warner Brothers probably isn't stupid. Warner Brothers Discovery. They probably understand that. And they probably understand that AEW has value as a top brand in its niche. Not the top brand, but a top brand, certainly. And that they can make money off that. They'll probably end up getting a lot more sponsorship deals, much like WWE has gotten. That being said, I don't see how it's good for their business long-term to turn such a blind eye to the lack of diversity on their roster, specifically when it comes to black wrestlers. I went on a whole spiel on Going in Raw a couple weeks ago about this. And it's just not a good look. You know, when you think back to, for example, Marvel's Black Panther movie, anecdotally, how much of the sentiment out there was, man, it's so great to see that representation up on the screen. You look at AEW's product and it's like, man, who is this for? Because it seems to exclude quite a bit of people. So like, I think it's probably bad for their business, but then what would Tony Khan's response to that be? I just sold out Wembley and I'm probably going to hook up $1 billion TV deal. So at this point, it doesn't seem to be hurting his business, but I don't know. I just think it's a bad look for the company. That's just me, Feel free to disagree with that. As far as who the first black male in AEW is to win the world championship, he could put it on Hobbs if he put the work into Hobbs, building him up to be a monster, because I think Hobbs has everything. I think Swerve Strickland is a phenomenally charismatic person with like just top tier wrestling skills. And he feels new. He feels fresh. He feels like a guy who could push pro wrestling forward. He feels creative. He feels like, I don't know, relevant. But like, he's really not featured that much. Like, you embrace a guy like that. You put a guy like that up there in the top scene. Like, why is Jungle Boy main eventing a pay-per-view and like Swerve isn't even close to that? Like, there's nothing Jungle Boy has that Swerve doesn't have. And like 5 times as much. So I don't know. I mean, you'd think it'd be like not great for their business, but then they make a lot of money. So I don't know, man. It's not how I would approach things. That's for sure. Deep Voice Dude says, based on the past month or so of WWE, would you say Triple H or Vince McMahon is running the shows? I think it's a collaborative thing. I honestly think it is. I think Vince McMahon sits up there in his castle. He probably gets the scripts, day of, hopefully early day of, or maybe the day before, sends them back with whatever changes he'd like to see. He probably works on big picture stuff. And I'll be honest with you. The proof is kind of in the pudding. I have enjoyed WWE's product as of late. I think they've done a lot of good things lately. I think the women's tag division has been beefed up. I don't know if that's a Triple H thing, but I know that during Vince's time away, Triple H wasn't exactly stellar booking the women's division. And now it's a little bit better. I don't know if that's coincidence or not. I don't know. Backlash was, I thought, an amazing show. It was awesome. I think Triple H is there running the day-to-day creative stuff. And I think by and large, Vince is probably cool with a lot of the stuff Triple H is doing, but he focuses on some big picture stuff as well. It seems like a collaboration right now that's probably working more than it isn't. I said this before on Going in Raw. I don't really care who's running the show. I just want to see a good product. And if that's Vince or Triple H or a combination of the two, cool, right on. I'm down with that. Jordan says, do you think they could do a Batista turn on Triple H style angle for Solo on Roman in the future? I think Solo can get over as a big single star. I think it's possible. I think it might be a while, but people really like Solo Sikoa. So I think they could do something like that. Sure. Doug Jackson says, who should eventually take the Intercontinental Championship off Gunther? I'd like to see it be Sheamus down the line after Gunther has broken the record. Leo D. Sanas says, right now, who's the best option to win the men's Money in the Bank? I think, to me, I'd like to see it be Finn Balor or Damian Priest. Tragic Magic says, how would you book the new World Heavyweight Championship? Who's inaugural and what's the story going out of the fight? It's going to be Seth. I think Edge would have been a cool idea, but it's going to be Seth. Now that it's Seth AJ in the finals, it's going to be Seth Rollins. And as far as how to book it, I don't know. They're in a spot because they want Rollins to be on par with Roman Reigns. Roman hasn't beaten Seth like legitimately. Seth was the original guy to turn on Roman. So I don't know. I think that Seth, it's going to be interesting to see how long his reign is. Some call me Brock Lesnar says, should LA Knight's finisher be called the 2-for-1 special? No, it should be called the billionaire finger trap because I did like a Chat GPT thing where I booked LA Knight doing something and Chat GPT referred to his finisher as the billionaire finger trap, which is not the name of it. AJ Forsyth says, assuming Seth wins World Heavyweight Championship, who do you think should be his first big feud? He says a returning Drew McIntyre and turn Drew heel. I think it's a really cool idea. Drew McIntyre is coming to Raw. There's a lot of people on Raw that it could be. Drew as a heel is a good idea. Who else is over there on Raw? I don't know. You got Judgment Day, and they had that cool semifinal matchup. How about Damian Priest? I think they want to push him because he did such a good job with Bad Bunny. Marvell says, what wrestling title should get a redesign? What wrestling title should get a redesign? the TNT title. Redesign it and rename it. RedTube says, do you think Bryan Danielson is a better worker than Shawn Michaels? Oh, fuck, I don't know. There is no answer. There's no real answer to that one, man. They're both amazing. Helen Ramsey says, hey, Steve, what would be your favorite moveset of all time? My favorite moveset of all time? Probably of all time. I don't know. Seth's moveset is up there because he's got the pedigree and the stomp. That's a killer combination right there. Richard Ives says, and he's got the thing where he does a superplex into the Falcon Arrow. Yeah, Seth has got a killer moveset. He's like the perfect creator wrestler. Richard Ives says, do you listen to wrestling podcasts? If so, which one do you recommend? I don't really have a lot of time to listen to wrestling podcasts. I love Cultaholics Wrestling Podcast because I love those guys and they've got great chemistry. And, I don't have a lot of time, so I never make it through a whole one, but they're like 2, 3, 4 hours. I think they just did like a 4-hour one the other day. I love those guys. I think they're terrific. I think you can never go wrong with like a Wrestle Talk recap review. And I do like Pritchard's podcast. I think that Pritchard went through a phase where like anytime Conrad brings up Dave Meltzer, you have to listen to Pritchard shit talk Dave Meltzer for like 3 minutes. And it's like, get to the fucking point. Like, I wish that Conrad would just avoid questions involving like Dave Meltzer heard this backstage because it just doesn't get anywhere. And like, here's how a typical Pritchard thing would go. Conrad says Dave Meltzer reported on so-and-so doing something backstage. Is this true? Pritchard will say, oh, well, if Dave Meltzer said it, he must be making it up. And then he usually confirms the reporting. That being said, it is a wealth of information for what the mindset of Vince McMahon and WWE Creative is during a huge chunk of WWE's popularity. So it's interesting stuff. Let's see here. Okay, so we're going to get into this now. So the wrestling talk is basically done. I'm going to talk about my friend the Enforcer a little bit here. And it's an interesting thing because doing content creation for a living and doing it in a way that really tries to, like, one thing that we really try to do in the Friendo community with Going in Raw is establish a community that is respectful and inclusive and level-headed. Part of having a community as part of like your job is the responsibility in discussing things that are emotionally kind of heavy when things that are very emotional happens. And it's not very often at all. A lot of you asked, hey, how you doing? And we're sorry for your loss. It's been really hard. It's been really hard. I personally, and I can't speak for Larson, but he's told me essentially the same thing. And he said it publicly. I've never faced a loss like this before. And I partially am opening up this way because there are other people out there who have experienced loss. And sometimes it's just good to talk. It's good to hear things. But to open up a little bit, back in 2008, I lost my brother-in-law at a very young age. He was 34 years old, married to my sister. And my 4-year-old niece at the time, it was a difficult time in my life because I was trying, I like moved from LA back to Sacramento to be with my family to try to help raise my niece because now she was without a father. And in the end, like, she ended up great. And, she is like a daughter to me. But it's a difficult thing to get through. And that's the closest thing I've had to like real loss in my life. And as much as I loved my brother-in-law, he was a great guy. We got along excellently. Whenever I saw him, it was like we'd known each other for our entire lives. He was like one of us, right? Like, he was not involved in like my day-to-day life. Like, we were 400 miles away and, I'd go to visit on the holidays and stuff. Enforcer was part of my life. He was a part of my life, of my heart, of who I was. Like, we had text threads, me, him and Larson, me, him, and some of the mods. And we would interact from the moment I woke up because he was an early riser. So I'd almost always have a text message from him. To the moment I went to bed, I'd usually be texting him jokes. To us planning out our business stuff. he was part of all that. Like, my business is my life, you know? It's like, it's how I feed my family. It's how I keep this roof over my head. And he was a part of that. And so not only is it like the loss of a friend, it's a loss of like, okay, this is going to affect my business. This is going to affect how I feed my family. And the idea of permanence of loss is heavy for me to think about. I was telling this to a close friend of mine the other day, and might be silly to some, but my mind, since I was a child up until the age of 44, has been, consumed by the pop culture that I prefer to consume. Comic books and movies, right? One of my favorite movies of all time is The Wrath of Khan, which I think is one of the great movies that deals with death. However, in the next movie, Spock comes back. And in the comic books, there's a running gag where nobody dies forever. And there's like a flicker of my brain that sometimes says to me, oh, he'll be back. But then the 99.9% of the rest of my brain says, what are you talking about? No, he's not. Like, it doesn't work that way. That's not how life works. And I'm like, the hell, that's a trippy thing to think of. I miss my friend dearly. And it's only been a couple days. And it gets better a little bit every day. And I've got my family around me, and they are a tremendous help emotionally, and talking to people and talking to Larson and having the celebration stream like we had on Twitch the other day helped immensely. And I've considered going to grief counseling if I feel like it might be helpful. I've taken a couple days away from this, and now I'm back at it, and I'm making sure to keep an eye on my mental health and my emotional well-being. But it's very hard. It's very hard because I miss my friend. So I'm doing okay, and I will be okay, because I have a strong support team around me with my family and my friends and the friendos out there. But I miss the Enforcer. I love the Enforcer, and I'm devastated that he's gone, because it felt like yesterday that he was screaming from the top of his lungs, I won the Daytona 500, because he just won predictions for WrestleMania. And every time now that I think back, like, man, I'm too tired to do Unsolved Mysteries tonight, or I'm too tired to, bother him to come in and do a Let Me Tell You Something stream on MF Steve here. I just want to let him do his thing, and it's easier for me anyways. I regret that now, because I should have taken advantage of every moment I had with him. So yeah, I just find myself sometimes watching Raw, just straight up like live streams of I pulled up the WrestleMania live stream the other day, just like the raw footage that I had of it, not even like the chopped up version, just so I can hear us have conversations. And that stuff helps. It helps to have so much footage of him and so many things I can go back to, but it's also a reminder of what I lost. So yeah, when you ask how I'm doing, that's how I'm doing. I'm just trying to deal with it day after day. And I appreciate everybody who said, hey, I hope you're taking care of yourself, and I hope you're doing well. But that's how I'm doing. And yeah, so there it is. There's my answer. Thanks everybody for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it. I'll be back probably tomorrow with another video, because I'm trying to get a bit more ambitious with WrestleJuice and get my thoughts out there and talk to you guys. So yeah, whether it's here or at Friendo Club Wrestling, or if it's at Going In Raw, I really appreciate everybody for being around. And I really appreciate all the love and positivity that me and Larson have received. And everybody and all the nice things they've said about the Enforcer. So that's going to do it. Check out this video over here and hit that like button and the subscribe button.